Chapter 1. When Tracker thought he heard the call of a wolf in a distance, he sat up in bed and listened. It was a piercing howl, a maddening howl, and a painful, mournful howl, as if it was coming from his room and it sounded like him. A whining, whimpering moan of an animal who had lost a mate or been caught in a trap. Maybe he was just imagining it, because how could there be a wolf so close to the middle of San Francisco? A place with concrete skyscrapers, cable cars, and humans. He had returned to San Francisco with Hunter and Haley with thoughts of getting back to work at Hunter's company. And it hit him. Hunter is no longer a bachelor, and what the hell was he doing there anyway? He snapped to his feet and began packing his leather jeans. "What are you doing, Tracker?" Hunter said, watching at him from the doorway, as Tracker gathered up his leather knapsack holding one change of Levi's, an extra t-shirt, and his leather jacket. He rolled them tight and placed them in the sack, slung it across his massive shoulder, picked up his helmet from a chair and held it loosely in his hand. Tracker stood 6'3" in his motorcycle boots, his thighs budging through the tight leather pants. There was a definition of taut muscles stretching to get free of his jeans, shirt, and jacket. "I'm going home. Now that you have Haley back and you're a family man now, there's no room for me." But Hunter didn't want to take that for an answer. He knew it was more than that. He knew Tracker was in love with Haley too. How could he not? She was beautiful and she was a human, and he had met her and fallen in love with her, not knowing that she was Hunter's true mate. Tracker couldn't meet Hunter's eyes when he tried to explain why he didn't want to stay with him any longer. Hunter sensed Tracker's feeling for Haley, and he could smell the arousal on him when she was around. It was a scent to mate. But not just with anyone, but with her. When Tracker first met Haley at a frat party he had been invited to, there she sat, the girl of his dreams. Pretty and innocent. Sitting in a corner with all the guys wanting her, and her waving them off, and not wanting to be bothered. That was his type of girl. Tracker wanted a girl that no man could get to, and she seemed to be the one until he discovered she was his brother's girl. She belonged to Hunter. "Tell Haley I'm going back to the ranch. I know she thinks I'm staying, but you know how it is. I have to find my own way, and I have to mate." "Why don't you tell her yourself? You know she doesn't want you to go. And I want you to stay too. You have your own entrance. You never have to see us." He knew, but she would be there, and he desired her. He had to find someone to take the thought of her out of his head. Tracker wasn't interested in mating after he discovered Haley was unavailable to him. It was what he told his family, because that was what they wanted to hear. But all he wanted to do was find a human female and take her in as many ways as possible, and move on. He vowed that until he found the one woman for him, mating wouldn't be his life. Fucking would be. Not the life of his father, or his uncles or brothers. There was something calling him, and he had to answer the call. Like the sound of the wolf he heard earlier. It had to be that wild wolf nature he heard his father Lycell talk about. But Lycell speaks little of it now that he has Adrianne, and she gave him 6 dominant sons who one day will be head of their own packs. "I have to go home first and see our mother. Then I'm leaving." "What are you going to do, Hunter, now that you are a proud father of 4 pups, and you managed to capture a human female too?" Hunter smiled because he was indeed proud of himself for waking up and realizing that he loved Haley more than he could comprehend. And that Katie had long moved on, and he had left her in his heart when he met Haley. It took him time to see the young woman in Haley. Before he thought of her as a child. Yet he wasn't that much older than she, but he had lived a far faster life, and he had grown up in the wilds of Alaska. "I'll probably move back to Samsaville and build a home on our land. Not too far from the Samsa ranch. Haley wants this, and since I have my pups, then I have to make sure they are safe and happy." He glanced at Tracker. "The town is expanding, why don't you stay? Thorne and Damon are there to keep you company," Hunter's words dying on Tracker. I can't. He stares at Hunter. Something is calling me, and I don't know what it is. I have to find out what I want in life and who I am. You're a Samsa werewolf. Rich beyond your wildest dreams. Why do you need more? Tracker walks to the door and turns and stops. His eyes wandering around the room as if it's his last time sleeping in a bed. I don't know, Hunter. Maybe it's my spirit. Maybe I'm just like my father. I have to test boundaries. I have to compete. I have to kill or be killed, he said, looking over his shoulder at Hunter. You know how that is. Kiss Haley and the pups for me. Tell her that I love her. When Tracker said that, his voice broke. Hunter knew Tracker's affection for Haley, but he didn't know until that moment that Tracker was indeed in love with her, and it broke his heart to leave. Hunter wanted to say he would share Haley with him if he would stay, but Hunter doesn't share, and he stopped short of saying any more because he knew Tracker was the same as he. Tracker wanted only what belonged to him. I'll tell her, Hunter said. With the door open and Tracker waiting to leave as Hunter looked at him and gave out a small smile, Tracker took a step back, turned and hugged him. Oh, tell Haley I'm making my car a present to her. I'm taking the motorcycle. Not my baby. No. Don't worry, Tracker said with a laugh. I'm not worried. I would have to come looking for you, and it wouldn't be pretty. Hunter shot him a half smile. You mean you would let something like a motorcycle come between brothers? Tracker said. Hunter smiled and slanted his head. Well, yes. Hunter broke into a wide smile. It's not just any motorcycle. I wish you would get your own. I had planned on giving that to one of my boys. Maybe that could be arranged. I had planned on buying me another. It's not American. I'm all about American, and what could be more American than a Harley? Tracker said as he hit Hunter on the shoulder, paused a moment, and then closed the door behind him. Tracker headed for the elevators, and it zoomed down to the garage. He found his bike waiting, he climbed on it and headed it north and then east. As he rode east, he thought of the woman whose husband had shot him. He smiled. Chalk that up to experience. Never fuck a woman that has a dangerous boyfriend or husband. But he was dangerous too. The only thing he didn't fight his battles with guns. He used his brute strength. Strength of his kind against a gun, Tracker was no match. Not realizing he hadn't eaten lately, he spotted a diner in a small valley town. There was no way he would hunt, and he remembered he had become fond of beef the way Haley cooked it. So he drove down into the valley and up to the door of the diner, parked his bike and climbed off of it. When he strutted through the door, he looked around, and all that was in the diner was an elderly couple. They barely looked up from their meal and glasses of iced tea. Tracker sat at the bar, looked around, and a young blonde with short hair came from the back and slapped a menu down in front of him. She wore a pink and white waitress uniform with a white apron. You couldn't tell it was white because of the stains of ketchup covering it, and but for the white lace tied around her waist holding it up. She leaned over, meeting his eyes. In a large mirror hanging over the opening where she placed her orders, Tracker glanced up, and instead of looking her in the face, he concentrated on her short uniform, which showed her firm, smooth legs. His cock throbbed from need on taking all of her in. He forgot why he was there, and then it came back to him. Food. What are you doing here? Tracker raised his head from the menu because he recognized the voice. It was the woman he had picked up from the bar. Her eyes were bluer than he remembered, and she was a true blonde. He saw that when she bent over. She hadn't shaved lately. Her hair was cut short like a boy. When he last saw her, she had a full head of flowing blonde curls which fell to the middle of her back. Her body a little smaller than he remembered, but her breasts were all that he couldn't forget. He remembered taking them in his mouth and sucking her nipples until they turned red, and still she begged for more. He remembered how his cock filled her up and still she begged for more. He remembered her tightness and how he plunged his hard, strong cock into her until she begged for him to stop, and still he wouldn't, and she loved every minute of it. It all ended when he knew he had to get some rest, and she had to go home that night. "I thought you were dead," she said, her eyes narrowing. "Are you all right? Bo shot you twice." "3 times, Tracker said with a smirk. "Don't I look all right? It will take more than a bullet to kill me." "You can't stay here. My husband is coming to pick me up any minute now. If he sees me, he will beat me again. And who knows what he would do you. He's the one that cut my hair." Tracker's forehead furrowed into 3 rows. He had never heard of anyone beating a helpless female. And there was no way in hell he would give him a chance to shoot him again. A hunter's creed and werewolves are the same. Never kill a pregnant female, and never cause injury to a female or her young. Not with me around. He will never hurt you again. But you won't be around. Tracker picked up a knife and fork wrapped up in a white paper napkin, watched at it, and put it down. "I'm hungry and I'm not letting a man frighten me or hurt you," Tracker said, looking into her eyes. "Did I tell you how blue your eyes are?" "Yes, all that night. Now go." Her voice showing urgency and fear. She placed her hand on his arms. "I don't want anything to happen to you. I'm used to him. I know he will calm down in a few weeks, and he will tell me he's sorry. You should never have to settle for that." He sat back on the stool and looked at the woman. "You're beautiful. If you were mine, I would never treat you like that. Please leave me. I wish I was yours, but I'm not. I'm a married woman." Tracker ignored her warnings. "I'll have the largest steak on the menu. And tell the cook to drop it on the grill and pick it up. I want all the blood running through it." She stood looking at him as if he was crazy, and then she shook her head. She left and told the cook in Spanish. He looked through the small opening at Tracker. His eyes opened wide, as if he knew he was in the presence of a werewolf. Tracker stared back at the cook for a long time before he decided to cook the steak as Tracker asked. The girl brought the bloody steak to Tracker, and she stood gaping at him as he devoured the large T-bone. He ordered a beer, sat back and drank it. "Now will you leave?" "I'm not going without you," he said, placing his hand on hers. She pulled away and looked around. "I can't go with you." "Why not?" Tracker said, leaning and kissing her on the lips. The blood coursed through him and his hard flesh pulsed and his spine tingled. Never had he felt like that before. True, he hadn't felt like that with too many women. Only one to be exact, until he came across this one. He stood. "I'm passing this way on my way to Arizona. Be ready." It wasn't a request. It was a demand. Tracker saw what he wanted, and it was her, and he would take her with him. "What's your name?" she asked him as he headed for the door. "Tracker," he said, turning around to her. "And what's yours?" "Zoe." When he met her in the club, he didn't bother to ask her name. He wanted one thing from her, and it wasn't to get to know her as a person. He wasn't interested in taking her to dinner and falling in love with her over candlelight. Tracker left Zoe watching at him as he strolled through the door of the cafe and to his bike. He saw a beat-up black Ford truck pulling up with a trailer hitched behind it, and on it was a motorcycle. As Tracker climbed on his motorcycle and started it up, he cruised past the Ford and got a good look at the guy behind the wheel. Tracker's eyes gave out a threatening, menacing burn. It was Zoe's husband turning and peering at Tracker, and Tracker staring him down. He was the one who pulled the trigger when he saw Zoe on her knees sucking Tracker's dick. It wasn't that Tracker didn't understand the man's outrage. He would have been angry too if he caught the woman he loved sucking on a dick twice the size of his. But he wouldn't have settled it by shooting him or killing him. He would have let her go. Tracker looked back as the guy stumbled out of the truck. If he had known what the guy would do to Zoe, he would have turned back and taken her from the man. But he didn't know, and he wouldn't know until later.